And we're back with another edition of the All Beef No Filler podcast. I'm your host, Pascal Paul, the Director of Scouting for Prep Baseball in Nebraska. As always, joined by Parker Hagman, our Upper Midwest Director of Ops, Social Media, and everything else important behind the scenes. Another special guest, as always, the 7-time GPAC title-winning head coach of the Concordia Bulldogs. Welcome, Coach Ryan Dupic.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on. It's one of the top programs in the state, I would say, bar none division. Had 7 GPAC titles over your tenure, 6 national tournament appearances, records in wins, home runs, runs scored, hits, pitcher Ks. No, before you, there was no winning season before 1979, Coach. I don't know. How have you done it? How did you get it started? And then obviously you're at the pinnacle now. What's it like, as you keep trying to build off of what you built already?
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words. And, I think initially we just really tried to start with the people. I felt like kind of a buzzword, but we believe in it. It's a culture really needed to build a foundation with the culture of our program. We felt like we want kids to really pursue the best version of themselves. We felt like there was a really good infrastructure here in place. You could see the other sports on campus were doing very well. We're very competitive. And so we felt like, man, why can't the baseball program here be successful too? So, initially in the program for me, it was really just about establishing a good foundation with our people. We started to build our culture. We talked about things like family, continuous improvement, trying to build foundations and processes and systems within the program. We recruited a lot of kids. We brought a lot of guys in initially. And I think that really came to fruition a few years in where it became, whereas maybe a little more coach driven initially, the players really started to take hold of it. And I look back, and I think 2017 was a big season for us. It was when we won our first conference championship. I had actually been diagnosed with cancer at the time, and we had one assistant coach at that time. So we had a whole bunch of kids and not a lot of guys around. They really took a hold of things and took responsibility for stuff. And from there, I feel like they kind of gave a map and a vision for what it could be. And we've just been able to continue to grow it from there. And obviously, you need good, talented players, but I'm really proud of the people we have. We have really good kids, really good people, good coaches. It's just kind of been a really good journey on that front.
Coach, you started there about the same time when I started at Iowa Western, and I know I always admired the way you developed and talked about pitching, and I think the program speaks for itself. But when I was doing the research, you got all these records for offense, and you're supposed to be a pitching guy. You dominated pitching at Buena Vista, came here. Obviously, the strikeout record you broke 4 or 5 times in your tenure, but you've got home runs, runs scored, hits. What has been offensively the secret sauce? Even in those 2 years, you talked about that 2017 year. That's only 2 years into your tenure and you're winning conference tournaments. How did that accelerate so fast for you on both sides of the ball?
We had some really good coaches. Bryce Berg, who's now the hitting coordinator for the minor league system for the Minnesota Twins, really established some great processes for us. And then we brought along, we had some help along the way from many people, but Connor Watson, who's now been heavily involved in baseball through Driveline and such, and then we transitioned into Caleb Lang. That was really when our offense peaked. We had some terrific hitters, and you guys know you got to have good players, and we really found a peak of some really, really good players. So I think we're maybe overlooked a little bit, and we're guys that could really swing it, and we just got a really good influx of talent at that time. Continue to build good processes with that. You brought up a good point there. I tried to stay uninvolved. Maybe that's why it was so good. I don't know, but our hitting, it was really just a blending of having really good, talented players who love to hit. Man, I mean, I think a phrase our current hitting coach Ben Berg talks a lot about is guys who hit a lot. Like you got to swing, man. Like you got to hit. You got to keep practicing. And you got to put the time in on that. So I think we've built a culture of that in our program, and you combine that with a lot of really good players and a lot of good things happen. I think some of the numbers those kids put up were really exceptional, and they started to compete with one another, but in a really good sense where it was still team first, but trying to continue to push and challenge each other. And it was just the best of all worlds coming together.
Coach, dig a little bit into that hitting philosophy that you guys are doing. Obviously, you've got all those records and stuff. Are there things that you guys stress more than other things in order to get the most out of these guys?
Yeah, and to be clear, borrowing the term, one thing we try to do a good job of is, I focus a lot on the pitching side, or hitting coaches focus a lot on the hitting side. It's really a co-head coach process, but we obviously are really aligned within that vision. Our hitters are focusing a lot on a couple of main core tenets, and we're trying to create as much evaluative processes for that as possible. And for offensively, we're looking to create bat speed. We're looking to create solid contact, and we're looking to make good swing decisions. And I think we do a really nice job of creating systems that align very directly to those objectives, not getting too far outside of that. I think it's really easy nowadays. There's so much information out there to kind of be swayed back and forth a little bit to whatever comes. And I think we just do a really nice job of staying aligned in that vision. And we do the same thing on the pitching side. We're talking about command control, pitch shapes, durability, and velocity. And I think if we can find systemic processes to build guys towards those objectives, we include it in our system, and we continue to try to find ways to better accomplish that. But we're not kind of I think sort of blowing with the wind too much about whatever direction the latest fad is or the latest thing is. I mean, over time, if you can swing at really good pitches, you can drive the baseball, and you can make pretty consistent contact, you're going to be a good offensive ball club. So, and the same thing on the bump. You got to make pitches, you got to create shapes, you got to stay healthy, you got to try to improve your stuff a little bit. So, I think we've really spelled that out very well over time. Our players have really bought into those processes, and then it's just a matter of, like anything else, once you have strategy, then your culture drives that execution, and it drives the behaviors that you got to do to consistently get guys to improve. So, and I think that's a little bit of a snapshot of what we tried to do and the processes we've had.
Coach, your acceleration from when you started to now has gone so fast, and obviously being a college coach myself, there's always a double-edged sword of developing the player and trying to win games, and I think you've probably towed that line as good as anyone, especially in our area. How do you toe that line, especially in practices or maybe in a fall to spring setting? What
Yeah,
is it like for you in trying to get both of those, edges of that sword really sharp?
a great question. I mean, um, initially it was easier because we weren't really at a place of probably competing at the level we wanted to. Um, we were pretty firm and pretty direct initially, and we had some situations and decisions we had to make that probably cost us winning a few baseball games early. But we felt like the culture long term had to be put in place, and that was really important for us. It's harder now. There's no question about that. Just because we're a little bit more competitive, and the standard becomes competing at a championship level. But I think you have to understand your people and your team and where you're at in the developmental curve. I think the last couple of years, we've had such a good run and a couple of really good classes going through that there are probably some times where you have to have a pulse for your guys and where they're at in their developmental journey. It's a lot different working with a junior and a senior and a third year and a 4-year guy than it is working with a freshman and a sophomores. We've graduated a lot of guys after last year, so we've found ourselves digging pretty deep into development and trying to continue to renew those commitments because we feel like we need to build not only for the short term and the long term. I'll be interested to see what that looks like for us early in the season. Maybe we're a little bit not quite as far along as we want to be when you're thinking about some of those long term visions, mid season, late season. But at the same time, we feel it's necessary to give our guys an opportunity to compete at the level they need to and peak in the way that they need to. Um, Last season, that wasn't the case. We felt like, the last couple of years, we had teams that, we needed to be ready out of the gate right away. So we're still going to try to be that case. It's a hard needle to thread, and it's a really good question. Honestly, if you figure it out, let me know. But I feel like you got to know your people. You got to trust where you feel like your gut or your team is at. You got to understand your guys. I think year 1, 2, 3, 4, it's like, man, we got to be ready first game and have everybody there. Now, being in my 11th year and kind of going through things a little bit more, you get a guy coming back from injury or something. You're like, I mean, if this guy misses opening weekend, is this the end of the world? Right? We're probably going to be okay if we can have it at the right time. So just a little bit of patience sometimes goes a long way on that stuff, I think.
Yeah, what's that saying? It's hard to see the forest when you're standing amongst the trees, I think, is the one thing
Yeah,
hard to get those kids to realize sometimes.
no doubt.
You've always been at the forefront, in my opinion. At least from my observation, I've been close, obviously to your career, and I think you've been at the forefront of new age development. I know you say you're not chasing latest fads, but I think you've done a good job of focusing on where the lower hanging fruit is in the development world and going after it for your guys. How, when you implement all of the new tech and all of the stuff that's coming out and everything and the numbers thrown at you, how do you talk to kids in a way that they understand and where they can
Yeah,
actually use that on the field? Is it player to player? Do you have kind of a system? Is it per, whether we use Rapsodo or TrackMan, how do you
yeah,
navigate that
yeah.
form of development?
It's awesome. I mean, these are the questions we have all the time. I think, you know, I'm very blessed to, early in my career, maybe have some opportunities to come across some people in really professional baseball that really helped me gain a strong sense of how to create simplicity on the side of complexity, if you will. Um, and I think that's such a key question because I think a simple approach done with conviction is probably a heck of a lot better than the opposite of that. And so I think what we've tried to do is we do a ton of assessment procedures in our program. When we bring guys in, I know, like speaking for pitchers, we'll do various testing on the strength of their arm. We'll do a video analysis. We'll measure some of those mechanical components. We get some of the new data with spin rates and efficiencies and vertical horizontal break and all that good stuff that everybody's got. We categorize them. We think about what pitches can we add, what pitches probably don't play for this guy, whether he's pronation, supination bias, what are his hips, retroverted, anteverted, how does he move within his delivery, and then we combine that with strength scores in the weight room, testing guys in certain lifts. We do jump mat testing for explosiveness, how much force in the ground, how quickly to get out of it. How are they two-legged? How are they one-legged? I mean, there's a whole process we go through with all these guys, but I think if you have a good relationship with your players, I don't know, like we describe it to them at sort of a broad macro level, but I don't really always necessarily um, share every single micro detail with them within that. I think if we can help them understand that, guys, these are all of the things that we're going to consider when we do programming in the weight room, when we do what you're going to do at practice, and then they come to practice and they see, 18 different names listed and everybody's doing some similar things, but a lot of things that are a little bit different too, just small adjustments. They understand that, okay, this is being applied. This system is more formed for me specifically. So I think the beauty of data and analytics is it provides really quick, a lot quicker feedback and buy-in. So I think there's some of those times where you can really quickly get there with guys. And then other times there's still a trust factor to this. I really believe super strongly that information is really important, but the skill of a really good coach is still the primary role, I think. You've got to be able to distill that really simply. So if we collect, I just listed 15 different things we collect. At the end of the day, there's probably 2 or 3 of them you're going to share with a guy, because 10 or 12 of them just probably don't matter that much. You're pretty simplistic on where he's at. And I think when you talk about development, I think people are always like individualize, and I think that's fair, but it's also a little bit about kind of categorization. I mean, guys are a lot more similar too. Not everybody needs something completely unique to them. You're going to see a ton of similarities. And then there's these small outlier cases where you got to go trust your network of coaches and people that you believe in that can help guide you in the right path. So honestly, 90 to 95% of them are pretty darn similar with just some small adjustments. And then you got that 5 to 10 that you got to go figure it out and solve the problem. So I think we do a pretty good job of collecting the data on the front end. We hold meetings with guys, especially after fall ball. We try not to touch too much on getting too depth. We want them to go play and compete and build the culture of our program in the fall. But then after that, we really lay things out really clearly with the information. We say, hey, this is what it's telling us. This is the direction we're going to go. And then after that, I mean, it's just go work for about 8 to 12 weeks. There's still not, you still got to go put the time in after that to really improve that stuff.
Yeah, I
We're
like the
obviously in
point
the
that
business of collecting data when we run our showcases, right? Are there things that you look at from the high school side of things during the recruiting process, like any numbers jump out to you, or something that you like to see when these guys go through their circuits?
Yeah. Yeah. Some people will like it. Some people will tar and feather me here, but you know, I really do. I like exit velocity. We do want to see people have. I mean, we've got a lot of data that shows and supports batting average, on base percentage, slugging percentage that our assistant coach Ben Burr put together. The numbers are better if you have higher ceilings on exit velocity. Now, that doesn't mean that every single person needs to be that way. Again, you got to go back and categorize your players. Some guys are going to swing and drive the baseball higher. Others, some guys are more defender types, athletic, and they can get away, obviously, middle infield type, whatever, with maybe not having as high. But I think that information is helpful for us offensively. Bat to ball stuff and swing decisions are just incredible. And that's still a little bit tough to see sometimes in more of a showcase style metric. But the metric stuff and the showcase stuff is really helpful to combine the information you have with some of your gut and what you see as a player. I think that's something that I'll commend you guys have always done a good job on. Pascal, you've reached out to me about players too. It's like, every now and again, like you guys will reach out and you'll text me somebody, hey, I like this guy, like he can play. There's still a factor to that part too, and or like I feel like this guy can be developed, or I feel like he can grow and improve. And the reality is people put much too much stock trying to figure out what the one silver bullet is. And the reality, it's a little bit of everything, man. You got to factor all that stuff in at the same time. So I think, we do a pretty good job, I feel like, of balancing that stuff. Pitching side, like, if you can find me a guy with some length and feel, ability to spin a breaking ball, keep guys off balance. We all know going to college, it's like we need having some velocity can carry a long ways because you can get away with a lot more mistakes, but you better have some secondary stuff in those big moments too. I mean, that's what's going to get you out of it. So I think that stuff, when you can get and see spin metrics and vertical horizontal break, and you can get a feel for some of that stuff and how they move. And probably, as funny as it sounds too, you get those metrics. Some of the best stuff you guys do is you got video attached to it. So you get to see the player in action. How does he move, and what's his ceiling, and where can we carry with this guy? That stuff's super, super important.
I feel like that, you made a point about exit velocity, and I think, just because you have a high exit velocity doesn't mean you're going to get recruited to a certain level, right? You are getting compared to everyone else that has that high exit velocity, and now everything else matters, right? Now we're comparing apples to apples with exit velocity. All right, can you defend? Can you actually hit? Can you actually, are you a good teammate? That's where those other extracurricular things come in, which I think, parents, players sometimes forget about that, and they just see the $100-mile-per-hour exit velo and like, oh, I should get recruited, when there's a lot of secondary, thirdary things that come into play there.
Well said. Velocity is a foot in the door, man. It opens a door, right? But it doesn't let you in either. There's other factors you have to figure out within some of this. And when we look at that stuff, we're just looking at ceilings. What are the opportunities? But two guys exiting at the same velocity can be really different players. I think everybody should know and understand that. And I know that can be hard sometimes, and it's just about parents and people getting educated. But end of the day, there's a factor here where if you feel like a guy can play, I was talking to a coach about this the other day, and he had kind of recommended one of his guys, and now he's doing really well. And it's like, man, metric wise, I don't know if I ever would have taken that kid, but that kid can play and he competes and he loves to win. So, I mean, there's still a ton of factors to this stuff. And people have to understand, like, if you can kind of see the whole 360-degree view of this stuff, I think it goes a long way. It's not just one thing. You go to showcases so that you can give yourself a chance to be seen, to have some metrics, to have some hard data, to have opportunities to be recruited. And then you still got to go play too, and you got to do some stuff, and you got to play well. There's multiple variables to all this stuff.
The other thing I think that young pitchers should take point, because I mean, you being one of the better pitching minds in Nebraska, but I've heard multiple pitching minds say this is a breaking ball. If you can spin a breaking ball, you're going to open some doors up. Obviously, velocity is the thing, and I think, when I played, it was 90. I think it's more 95 now is the goal, and everyone's looking for that breaking ball. Can you spin it? Can you land it? Can you get people to swing and miss? So young pitchers out there, make sure you're dialing in that breaking ball and not just going for that high velocity.
For sure.
Staying on the recruiting point, Coach, it's changed since 2015 to now. What was it like back then for you, and versus, then we can kind of get into what it's like now with all the different variable changes with the NCAA and what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, so much more video accessible, even though it was then. It's just super common for people to not have that now. So that allows you to branch out and expand your recruiting footprint a little bit.
Even from those college kids with Synergy and everything that you guys got there. I mean, you got video on everyone that you want, pretty much, from high school to college.
Yeah, so different. I mean, it's just so uncommon now. And, I think that allows you some some opportunities to recruit from your office a little bit more than you used to, which is important in the world we all live in, and people trying to make sure that you're managing time and finances and all the different facets of your program. You still got to be a little bit efficient with your time and resources. You know, I'm always super careful. I think there's tons of good and tons of concerns about all of the different levels and developments that have occurred within college baseball. And I don't think that in any way I'm sitting here being an old guy hating on any of this stuff. I mean, I think there's a lot of good to this, but you know, it's changed a lot. Like it's changed a ton, and I think the dynamic of a team a little bit is something that probably we value at a super high level here. Um, and you know, sometimes that's not maybe as much as it used to be. I think I could attribute a lot of our success, I believe, to that. So I do think we're still trying to find a certain type of person in relation to that. We don't disrespect anybody who maybe isn't looking for that, but that's important to us. Um, I think the involvement of parents is different. I don't know if I've had a single parent who come through on a recruiting visit this year and said that the recruitment process has been enjoyable for them. People are much more stressed, anxious, nervous, trying to put their best foot forward for other people, kind of a dog and pony show type thing. And sometimes it feels like you lose the transformative relationship driven aspects that you have a chance to grow and improve on, and really build as a foundation. Um, I think junior college has blown up. You know, I mean, it's been a route that a lot of kids are really enjoying taking. It's much cheaper financially initially. So you have a lot of kids who are really pursuing that route and sort of putting things off a lot more than maybe they used to. And even 2015 versus, you know, 2007, 8, 9, 10. I mean, I look back at myself when I was a player. I'm like, man, I don't know if I would have recruited myself anymore. I mean, the players are better, man. They're just better, and people always want to fight that. But I mean, I'm looking at the players that we're recruiting, even 8 to 10 years ago versus now. It's just different, and I think you have to be a better player. But that's because baseball is better everywhere. I mean, we in 2014, I had a kid that was drafted out of Buena Vista, and I look back at him, and he did such a great job, and I still think he'd get a ton of attention today. I got a friend who's works in a pro organization. He talked about the 20th round pick, which is the last pick nowadays, that they took a couple of years ago, was a 93 to 96 righty who had 3 years of experience under his belt as a rotation arm at Florida State. It's just different now. I mean, it's just different, right? That wasn't the case in 2014. You know, it's a different world. And so, you know, people have to look at what Major League Baseball is doing, how much better independent ball is. I played independent ball, you know, back in 2007, and they quickly found out that I wasn't good enough. They wouldn't even look at me now. It's just better ball, you know. So you see that, and that filters down. The transfer market's obviously huge. So I think coaches are looking for people. And if I was giving advice to kids, is first and foremost, you got to be a good player and a good kid. No, that never goes out of style. But the second part is be easy to recruit too. You know, I think kids are harder to recruit now. They don't always necessarily communicate as great. Some of them do a terrific job, but some of them maybe not so much. And I say that not as like a knock on kids. Kids are like super smart and do a ton of things now. I see it, but they didn't do 10, 15 years ago. But I think, coaches still want to feel a sense of connection. They want to feel like you really want to be a part of that school. I think the more you can do to put yourself in that place, the more comfortable people are with recruiting you.
Especially with the transfer portal nowadays. I mean,
Yep.
just communicating respectfully to any coach. You never
Without a
know
doubt.
where you're going to be, what's going to happen, or how your career is going to end up.
Without a doubt. Yep.
Have you guys changed, with who or where you recruit? Obviously, you mentioned the transfer portal is huge in junior college. But obviously, a high school, you're still getting a good amount of kids from high school. How has that changed from those three buckets and where you're
We,
pulling players
yeah,
from?
question. We talk about this all the time. I would say if you looked at our team right now versus 5, 6 years ago, there are more transfer guys, and that's just a product of the market and what things have changed now. If you also look at our team, we still are a foundational high school program. And so we're still recruiting kids in that sense. We cast a pretty wide net. We get up to the West Coast. We get down to Texas. We've had kids from all over. We've had kids from Florida. We've had kids from East Coast. Now it's probably a little bit more West Coast South. Um, And then, of course, we still had some terrific players locally, Nebraska and Iowa and the Midwest and all stuff like that. So I think we really feel like nowadays, this is a good time because it's just something we've been thinking a ton about with this class. Is I think it's pretty important to at least have some foundational depth and quality built from the high school market. I think going all one way or the other is really tough. If you're going to go all transfer, you better have like some things that really play into that, i.e., like a cheap school, different academic, requirements, responsibilities. It's interesting. All of us coaches sometimes feel like we have all the answers, but the reality is we're just building our strategy around what our school allows. That's the reality. You're just being a problem solver. So it's what's your academic requirements, what's your scholarship and tuition, what does that mean, what type of people you're going to appeal to, and then how does that play out into recruiting for your kids versus transfer kids. And so the reality is there's options and opportunities for everything, but I really hope that we'll continue to be a place that has a solid foundation of developmental for your kids, but continues to add in good transfer kids that can be impactful guys to help you compete at a regional and national level.
Yeah, that talent is, you mentioned it, there's talent everywhere. There's also talent in the recruiting side. There's more talent high school wise to recruit. There's more talent in the junior colleges to recruit, and there's more talent in the transfer portal to recruit.
Yeah.
So you got to be better across the board if you want some scholarships or you want to get recruited out there.
For
sure. What last two things I want to talk to you about, Coach, is just your outlook on this season coming up for the Concordia Bulldogs. Yep. Obviously, you've had sustained success. I think it's one of the hardest things to do in our game of baseball is to win consistently over multiple years. What do you got for them or for your squad this season? And then just talk to us a little bit about Concordia University as a whole and what it offers, just students in general that want to come there.
Yeah, for sure. This year's, I'm really excited about this group. We graduated some great players off of last year's team, and a national home run record holder, and a guy that was a 4-time all-conference player, a guy that was a 3-time all-conference player, all 3 outfielders, multiple guys in our rotation. We graduated some good players. There's no question about it. But there's a fun challenge ahead with that too. You get opportunities and options for new kids. I would say that the thing I most have enjoyed with this group is from the day they came to this point right now is that their process, their culture, their belief in what we do has just been incredible. They've worked exceptionally hard. We're still developing some of the skills necessary, getting guys in the place they need to be. I think we're going to have a great chance to compete for a conference championship. I think we're going to have a chance to get back to the national tournament. And I feel like it's a team that has a chance to make a really good run. It'll be better later in the year. And I say that because we have a nice influx of a couple of young guys and new guys that we like, but also some experienced veterans that have been around a little bit. Everybody wants to play best at their end, but I think there's some, there's some guys that there's some things your team needs to have for that to be the case, And I think you need some leadership and some good kids at the top. I think you need an influx of some other people, and then you figure out some of those solutions as you go. So I still think we're going to be able to, we might not hit 125 home runs like we have the last couple of years, but we're still going to hit some homers. We're still going to have some good offense. I think we're going to improve defensively. I think a key for us will be our pitching staff. We're going to pitch well, but can we pitch really, really well or just pretty well? That's going to be the difference. But I like our team. I love our guys. And, speaking to our program, I think the first thing I'd say is, even before I jump into some of the outcomes and things that I appreciate you guys mentioned, but we build great kids here. We build great men. Our parents will be the first people to tell you that. Our players will be the first people to tell you that. Our guys really grow as people here. They get their degree. Somebody asked me today, what's your graduation rate? I'm like, well, I think one kid didn't graduate 1 year in 11 years, but otherwise I think everybody else did, So we're going to do it the right way. We're going to help kids grow and improve as people. They're going to come out a better man. And I'm incredibly proud of that. And I never want to leave that. This is still a life calling in that sense. And then the second thing is we have a really strong track record of competitive success. I think we're one of 6 schools in the country in NAIA baseball that have won 40-plus games 4 years in a row. One of only 2 teams in the history of the Conference Scholar World Series. We went in 2021. You mentioned some of the conference championships and national tournament appearances. So there's a culture of high expectation here. We love it. It's going to be really hard for us to live up to. And I would wouldn't want it any other way. That's the way we want it to be.
Coach, there's no doubt your program has been one of, if not the best, I would think, at consistently winning over the last 7-8 years in the state. And we can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story with everybody. To everyone listening, thanks for listening to another episode of the All Beef No Filler podcast with head coach of the Concordia Bulldogs, Ryan Dupic. Tune in next week for another episode.
And I want to say, too, I thank you guys sincerely for what you do. This is a tremendous opportunity for us to continue to tell the story of how many good options there are across college baseball. We appreciate you guys' effort and just the integrity with which you do it, too. I feel like you guys do it the right way. And so appreciate you guys and really, really thankful for having the opportunity to come on.
Thank you, Coach.